Okay, let's call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Can I get a motion to review and accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there discussion?
Yeah, I want to add a motion to the agenda.
And what's the motion?
Motion is resolved that Otter Valley Union and Middle High School withdraw from the Vermont Principals Association until such time as the VPA recognizes the right to free speech
I'm so sorry.
and the value of dissent in the democratic society. I have it here for you.
Yeah, thanks. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh, you're supposed to say that.
Is there a second?
Sorry, it's ingrained. You're supposed to say discussion.
Is there a discussion? Do you want that on the consent agenda? Or do you want that conversation?
It's not on the consent agenda. It would be a separate new
It would
item.
probably be governance
In
process.
under the governance process, okay.
That's only if everybody approves it.
Yep.
So I have a statement if it's time for discussion.
I don't think it is. I think
No,
I think you would move that to governance process because you have someone here to do a presentation.
Okay.
So, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other conversation, or let's take a vote? Do people want to move that conversation to the governance process? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay. So we'll move a conversation about, Charlene, did you get that?
So.
The motion?
That did not vote? Who did not vote?
I don't know what the motion was, so.
He abstained, he wasn't here, no one's online.
There's a motion on the floor, and we just voted to do is move it to a later discussion
To the
so we could hear our
governance
guest
process.
speaker.
Okay, well, I just didn't hear the count on who said yay, who said nay.
Just moving it.
It's just to put it on, it's just to put it on the agenda.
I thought we were voting on
Okay.
that, okay.
Barbara was yelling nay, I believe.
Yeah, and I think I might not have.
Okay.
Okay. All right, now going to the rest of the agenda.
Yep.
All right, so all those in favor of the,
All those in favor of the consent agenda?
no, the regular agenda with the addition of the,
Oh, all those in favor of the regular agenda with the addition of the piece to the governance process about the VPA.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, moving on at 6:03 to presentation on good governance by Phil Gore. Welcome, Phil.
Hi, thank you. It's good to be with you, at least virtually here this evening. I'm at a high school where I've got a presentation just after yours. But I understand you may have some new board members. Is that accurate?
yes. And we have 5 new board members.
5 new board members. Okay. Well, the things I have to share tonight are really all about just foundations of good governance. What are those basic building blocks that you can build upon to do your work? And I'm going to share some slides as we go along here. Let's see.
Recording in progress.
Okay. Accept the recording in progress to move on. There we go. So hopefully everybody can see these slides okay. As we go along, I would love to have some questions, entertain some questions, some conversation with you. If I won't be able to see hands raised necessarily, so please feel free to interrupt. As you think about foundations of good governance, well, what is governance? And pretty much anywhere you look for a definition on governance, it's a word that's been around a while. Oftentimes it's described as the rules of a political system to resolve conflicts between actors and to make decisions. It's also been used to describe proper functioning of institutions and their acceptance by the public. I would call that legitimacy. And in a lot of leadership literature, you see that concept or question, is this legitimate or not legitimate? School boards have two endorsements, if you will, of legitimacy. I mean, school boards have been created by state legislatures, and so there's an accountability or a reckoning to the state for what happens in the school system. School boards, obviously, in the state of Vermont are elected by popular vote within the towns. And so there's that sort of dual grant, if you will, of authority from the state and from the local. And how the board navigates or balances that is really critical. I was privileged to co-edit a book a few years ago. It's called Improving School Board Effectiveness, a Balanced Governance Approach. Balance is something personally that's always been very important to me. Ever since I was a small child, I would like to, even in my body, I would like to be symmetrical, whether I was working out or just fidgeting. I like to make sure that I was in balance. And I think in recent years, it's very important. If you were to look up the word balance, it's both a noun and a verb. And that idea that a person is well balanced in their mental capacities, I think that's important. I also just personally believe that wisdom is found in a balance. Some of the things that we have to balance as school boards and individual members, we're consistently having to weigh and balance the rights and goods of an individual with the rights and goods of the collective or the bigger system. I think an important area of balance that the board has to take is that balance between micromanagement and rubber stamping. I don't think it's good in any ways if votes are always 7-0, and I don't think it's good if they're, or whatever, I use the word 7 there, but if votes are always unanimous, it's not necessarily healthy. Boards need to, weigh decisions, find that balance between being a critical friend and a cheerleader, and be able to make the best decisions that they can as a group. It's also important, as you think about balancing when it comes to good governance, to have a strong focus on student outcomes, the ends, if you will, and also be aware of processes or the means. How did we get there? To me and Tom Alsbury, who co-edited that book, we think and talk often about informed oversight. That board members individually, collectively, they're able to speak intelligibly about how the students are doing in their district. And they're also aware of needs and initiatives that the district has for improving how the students are doing. I think that term informed oversight is very important because it helps us have a perspective that we're not managing every detail, we're not critiquing every detail, but we're informed, we're up to speed, we're understanding, and we're making decisions from a place of understanding how the district is doing. There's really only one model of governance that is found in the literature in the U.S. There may be people that claim they have a model or a framework or a system. Tom and I conceived of something we call a balanced governance framework. I've been in part with several states now developing standards for school boards or frameworks for school boards. But when it comes to a research-based complete model of governance, it's often looked at, certainly by the Carters, that policy governance is kind of the research model and complete model for what governance looks like. Interestingly, the school board in which I serve, and which most people serve on a school board, is some modification of policy governance. Most boards have adopted a lot of the positive framework when it comes to roles and responsibilities governing through policies, but not necessarily accepted all of the details of the policy governance. This relates to me in the board having a strategic perspective. And if you look at this model on the slide, outcomes are at the core of what we do. How the students are doing, how they're performing, whether they're growing, whether they're improving, is right at the center. But in order to get maximized student outcomes, a lot of things have to happen at the operational level. I called that, for just illustration purposes, the 10 feet level, where these are the teachers, the paraprofessionals, the custodians, the food service workers, the bus drivers, They are doing things day in and day out that have a direct impact on students' growth and well-being. Your administrators in the system, we could refer to that as the 10,000-foot level. They are people that are overseeing those that are at the operational level. They're making decisions that are informed on feedback that they get from the operators, from families, and certainly with guidance from the board. They fall into those policy parameters in order to execute their work. At the strategic level, the board, in partnership with the superintendent, has a high-level view of what is happening for all the different systems coming together. I mentioned the book that I co-edited, but some of you, if you've heard me speak this last year, I'll often recommend The Governance Core. That book, Davis Campbell and Michael Fullen, is just a phenomenal, pithy book that gets right to the essence of what it means to practice good governance. Some of the things that they emphasize in that book, there's a whole chapter devoted to onboarding new members, something that a lot of boards take for granted or don't exercise intentionality in. Some of the other concepts in the book that I really like is having a trustee mindset, recognizing that you're stewards of the community's two most precious resources, right? Their students and their money. And that trustee mindset is important for not only the board, but often for the superintendent as well. To have that governance mindset that, you know, we're here as stewards to maximize outcomes with the public's two most precious resources. I mentioned that book, though, because they just have some great metaphors throughout the book. And one of them is based on wildfires or forest fires. They talk about, you know, there's people on the ground that are literally putting out the fire. They're running hoses, they're digging ditches, they're driving bulldozers, whatever it takes to contain the fire, and at the operational level. There's a command center at the tactical level that is sending firefighters to one area or equipment to another, watching the weather, telling people when to pull out or when to take cover. And then nowadays, traditionally it was someone in a fire tower. Nowadays, generally it's people in a helicopter who are really at the strategic level. They're up there at the high level where they can see everything that is happening with the fire and the winds and kind of what needs to happen on a big macro level. And the authors of that book, The Governance Core, they emphasize this is the role of the board. And they like to highlight that, you know, too often as a board member, and I'm a former board member myself, too often we want to roll up our sleeves and solve things at the operational or at the student ground level. And, you know, it's great to be a tutor in a classroom or to volunteer for activities. I think that's an important opportunity for the board to stay in touch with students and the schools. But ultimately, if the board is not up at the strategic level, thinking systemically across the district, who is? Right? Is that left only and solely to the superintendent? So I think it's an important foundation of good governance that if the board is not fulfilling its role and responsibility, no one else will do that. Now let's talk about some of the key areas of board service and board responsibilities. In the state of Vermont, there's a draft set of governance standards. Last year's legislative session authorized the Agency of Education to develop district quality standards. And in the district quality standards, the legislation specifically called out governance. This is important because it suggests a shift in the legislature and in the state's thinking that school boards, what they do, really does matter when it comes to student outcomes. In the proposed governance standards, there are three primary areas: governance priorities, governance protocols, and governance processes. In governance priorities, that's the board together with the superintendent getting crystal clear what are the essential priorities for our school district this year or for the next 3 to 5 years, often referred to as a vision and goals, or if for a district following policy governance, you would call those your ends policies, right? ENDS. Governance protocols is the way the board does its work. It's written agreements for how the board will do its work together. Oftentimes, boards will develop these and then review them once a year. You may have a policy that does this in your governance policies, but ultimately it's really important for any group to have a list of norms and protocols for this is how we will do our work together. And in your operating protocol, you would include things like, who is the spokesperson for the board? And how does the board make a decision? What happens after the board makes a decision? The protocol should line out that decorum. And in the governance core, they talk a lot about mind your manner. So it's really about how the board shows up and does its work together. The third area of the standards that will likely be adopted by the state this summer includes governance processes. So all of the different processes that happen throughout the year, whether it's superintendent evaluation, whether it's onboarding new members, whether it's adopting a budget, putting a budget out to the towns for vote, the processes of appeals. I mean, there are a lot of things. I served on a school board. I had a child in elementary school, a child in middle school, and a child in high school. And I imagined I was going to be on the board to somehow, better the opportunities and outcomes for my students that year. I realized after a year or two that everything has a process, right? Negotiating contracts, there's a process. And all the other things I just mentioned, there's a process. Processes for a school board need to be transparent and predictable. If you hear a comment from a staff member or a community member, well, you never know what to expect from this board. That's not a compliment, right? Your processes should predictably and transparently follow your board policy so that people do know what to expect. When they know what to expect, it builds confidence and trust in the board and in the system, and it allows the community to know where and when and how to provide input. So I encourage all school boards to pay a lot of attention in those three areas. Does anybody, kind of curiously, anybody have a question or a comment based on something I may have said or not said?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ken.
Please.
You mentioned the view from 50,000 feet is what we should be doing,
Yes.
but quite often from 50,000 feet, there are clouds in the way, or there may be people on the ground starting fires to hide something, and individuals look like ants. So 50,000 feet view gives you a good view of the weather and maybe the beautiful landscape, but it doesn't really give you a view of what's happening. And I think that we need to be aware that 50,000 feet is deceptive as it is illuminating.
So think about that, and think about how the board can get aggregated information, and when and where the board may need to take a deeper dive. It's a big risk if individuals on the board think of themselves as lone actors, and they think it's their business to go into a certain classroom or a custodian's closet or wherever it is and ferret out whatever investigation they think they need to do. That kind of independence undermines the work and credibility of the board. So as you think about how will you know what's happening on the ground level, you need to have systems and structures that bring that reporting up. And sometimes, admittedly, the board collectively needs to say, we need to know more about this situation. If you think of an incident, maybe a bullying or hazing incident that you get a report of, and the board will have natural questions. First of all, is this incident being well handled, well responded to? But then also a very natural question, is this systemic? Are there other examples that are happening? And that's where the board exercises good governance with the power of the question. Asking those very questions. Whatever the issue is, say it was a hazing incident happening with a sports team or any group, and the board could ask very directly to the superintendent, we want to see a report on how how many other hazing incidences have been occurring. We want to know as a board, is this on the increase or decrease? We want to know as a board that this problem is being addressed and solved in a professional and appropriate manner. So it doesn't prohibit the board from knowing what's going on at the ground level. I think the point at that higher level is just that if the board is not doing their role at that level, who is, right? Who is having the big picture? Anybody else, any other thoughts or follow up on that? So 3 areas that it's really critical that the board knows how to work well together, right? First of all is with each other. All the members of the board are one voice, one vote representing, right? It's essential to acknowledge that as a board member, we have 0 authority over any other citizen in the district. Individually, we have 0 authority to do anything. But when we're at the dais in a meeting that's been duly warned and called with an agenda that's been published, we have a very powerful opportunity to have an influence and a say in the decision making. I get called in the nature of my work. I've been involved with school boards for over 20 years now, and I'll get called sometimes from, some of the worst case scenarios. Can you help us? It might be a board chair, it might be the superintendent. We've got a new board member who's going through the district and telling people that he's their boss. Or we've got this rogue situation where somebody is out stirring things up and they're speaking as though they're speaking for the board. The board hasn't even had a conversation about it, right? How the board chooses to work with each other is really critical for the overall success of the school system. I'll say just a little bit more about that in a minute, but the other 2 big areas, again, how the board works with the superintendent, and then also how the board works with the community. At least 4 common challenges of working well with a group of people. There always are, and should be, differences of opinion. If people didn't have differences of opinion, then why have a bunch of people on the board? Groupthink is a very dangerous trap to fall into, to go along to get along. On the other hand, it's not necessarily healthy. It's not healthy mentally, and it's not healthy for the board for anyone to think of themselves as what used to be called a devil's advocate, or somebody that always has to be contrary. And there's a time to ask questions, and there's a time to work collaboratively together toward solutions. Differences of opinion are one thing, but really, if you get to know each other and you choose to do the hard work of working well together, you'll recognize there are different values. I alluded to some of those earlier with, some people think more about the rights and goods of an individual, and others think more about the rights and goods of the collective. Both are important perspectives that need to be brought to the table, talked through, worked through, and decisions made that are for the mutual agreement. A lot of times miscommunication or a failure to communicate can cause problems among board members. It's too easy to assume. When I get these calls, if somebody's all upset with something that someone has done or said on their board, my response 100% of the time, have you talked to them? More than half the time they haven't. They're wanting to get a sounding board, they're wanting to feel validated, but they're not necessarily wanting to go to the source to solve the problem. That failure to communicate or to make assumptions when we really don't know for sure, it is very dangerous. And I think something that I would urge all board members to engage with, take somebody out for coffee, sit down one-on-one with people. Don't send a text or an email if you're upset. Take the time to be a decent human being and recognize that the other people you're dealing with are also human beings. Sometimes, and I'll say this similarly with the community and with the superintendent, a lot of challenges come when there's a violation of expected or agreed norms. Some people are rule followers, and other people are more, it's better to ask forgiveness than permission kind of people. And so figuring out how you'll work together and be predictable with each other so that people know where you're coming from. Those things are best accomplished in a board retreat where you set aside time every year for people to be able to just talk humanly about who they are, where they're coming from, what their hopes and concerns are for the district, and working through those things that really humanize us. Because regardless of whether we agree with people or not, they're a human being. So common challenges with the superintendent, probably that big one at the top, is either unclear or unstated expectations. Someone on the board or the board as a whole expected one thing and the superintendent expected something else. It's really critically important in all the big areas that you write down what the expectations for the superintendents are. You may call that your means policies or executive limitations, but somewhere, somehow, it needs to be crystal clear what the superintendent will be evaluated on, what that criteria is, and what it is that you're wanting the system to focus their attention on. Again, miscommunication or a failure to communicate is huge. If you have an issue with your superintendent, you need to go and talk with them about what the concern is. And similarly, you need to understand and appreciate if the superintendent has an issue with you as a board member or a group of board members, they need to be able to come and share that concern and talk things through. Too many times I've seen boards make the mistake of not following up or following through with agreements with the superintendent. Some of the more troubling scenarios I've seen is, the superintendent is just excessively nervous. And you're like, what's going on here? What's happening? And you eventually find out they were supposed to have had a conversation about renewing the superintendent's contract 6 months ago, and somebody forgot to get that on the agenda. It's very important that the board is completely familiar. All board members are familiar with the superintendent's contract, all of your policies and your practices related to your oversight of your one direct employee, the superintendent. That's very important that you as a collective are the supervisor, and all those really important HR kind of things, you need to make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, people aren't left hanging, wondering where they stand. A misunderstanding of roles is common. When we're new to a board, there's no reason why we should know what it takes to be a board member. We shouldn't know what our role is because there's not much in life that's ever prepared us to be a school board member, to be part of a collective that together has oversight of something so precious and so large as a school system. That is something we grow into. Most of us, it takes us about 2 years to go through all the different cycles of the school year. Again, superintendent evaluation, the budget, negotiation, graduations, all the things most of us have to go through about twice. And then I think veteran board members can attest, it's like, oh, okay, now I kind of got it, right? And so just know that none of us know it all, and there needs to be an ongoing conversation about roles. The board's role, the superintendent's role, the community's role. The challenge with the superintendent frequently is a board overstepping. Certainly at times the superintendent can, inadvertently step into the board's role. And I've seen those situations happening, but it's more common as a lay elected citizen. We get on a school board. It's common for us to want to micromanage, want to run things that are really not our job. And we have to learn over time to delegate and to trust. And trust isn't something that's automatic. It's something that we develop over time when we get to know a person and have confidence in their ability to make decisions and handle difficult situations. This idea of communication, again, failure to communicate, a common challenge the board has with the community. It's too easy to sit back and say, well, we invited them and nobody came. Or, you know, well, they had an opportunity to make a comment at a board meeting. Like, really? That, you know, that's not the place for an in-depth conversation, and it's not very satisfying to come and make a public comment at a board meeting. So, you know, applaud those people that do and follow up with them later, because they cared enough to come say something to you at a meeting. They actually have some care and concern about your school system. Violations of open meetings law for new board members, it's critically important that they learn about open meetings law right away. Every state has some version of what's known as a sunshine law, and the heart of that, the spirit of it, is that the people have a right to know what is happening with the people's business. I'll say this here, you know, it's very important that your board meetings are conducted decently and in order. It is not in order for somebody from the audience to make a motion or to enter into debate with the board while they're having their meeting. It's a meeting that's held in public, but it's not a town hall meeting. It's not a public meeting. It's a meeting, it's a business meeting for the board, for the school system, that the public gets to watch. That's what the open meetings law is designed to protect. That there's not a walking quorum where individuals are making phone calls, text, emails, and trying to get people colluding with them to see or do things their way. That's a very dangerous, slippery slope. It's completely illegal, and it's something that the board collectively should make sure that you avoid. Any semblance of a walking quorum. I've got a slide later where I mentioned this idea of, you know, judicious use of email and text, and we'll underscore that a little further. But very important for the board to not think they are the customer complaint department. This took me about a year at least to learn as a board member. I used to love it when the public would come to me and share all their concerns and challenges. The problem is, you'll find, if you're the person who the public begins to think is the complaint department who will solve their problems, they'll have a line out your door before you get out of bed in the morning, because people will be coming to you. It is not the board's job to be the customer complaint department. You have policies on that, you know, and the people that are closest to the situation, the challenge, are the people who are best able to solve the issue. So our response as a board member, when a friend or a relative, neighbor says, you know, I've got this problem with Mrs. Smith and my third grade student is having this or that, it's that same question. Have you talked to Mrs. Smith about that concern, right? Oh, and you know, if they did or they didn't, right? Okay, have you talked to the principal? And if you're not satisfied there, have you talked to the superintendent? What a board member can do is direct people to where their problem can be solved. As a board member, we're not in the business of solving people's problems. We can't solve their problems. We have no authority to do that. I want to mention some of these pitfalls of public comment. I've been there before, maybe some of you have, where I've made a comment at a school board meeting or before a legislature or state board of education. It is very non-satisfying, right? I think we need to recognize that as board members and with our public. The most dangerous scenario what we can do is to roll up our sleeves and to start to solve the person's problem right there. Not only does the law preclude a conversation or discussion about something that wasn't warned on the agenda, it is not going to, it's distracting from the business at hand. And again, the board has no legitimate authority to solve those problems in those moments. What you can do is make sure that the superintendent and their staff have followed up with citizens that take the time to come to your meeting and share a concern. And I think it's really vital that we do that as a board. Sometimes some kinds of comments can be followed up with the board chair. They may have the knowledge, the information, but oftentimes it's the superintendent and their staff that would be the natural to follow up. Here, the board needs to make sure that follow-up happens. And I would encourage you to just have a protocol, a practice of asking the superintendent after the fact, whether that's, 2 weeks later or a month later, make sure that people's concerns and challenges are being addressed. A lot of boards will lament the idea of a lack of engagement, but again, it's all too easy for us to feel and say that, well, we gave them an opportunity and nobody came. The success of school systems, in fact, the research bears this out, that the more and more completely a board engages its community, the more likely that district is improving in student achievement overall and closing gaps in achievement. Community engagement really is the powerful lever that can bring people together. So it behooves a school board to do whatever it takes to appropriately engage the community, not customer complaints, but the community as a whole. Engage them in setting a vision, developing goals, hearing from the community what their vision and hopes are for their schools.
I have a question for that.
Yeah,
too.
please.
That's actually a topic, the last one about engagement is a topic we've discussed fairly frequently. Do you have any tips? Because we have a lot of trouble getting engagement from the community, except if there's a crisis. But sort of the day-to-day, how do we make the school better? What should the first graders be doing for field trips? All that sort of stuff. We really have trouble getting the community's feedback on that sort of thing.
Yeah. And what I would encourage again is a higher level governance conversation about the community's hopes and dreams. This is an issue, it's a challenge for every school, every principal, every school system is getting that kind of community engagement, but it's worth the effort. And so you have to ask yourselves as a board, what would it take for people to come? Do we need to provide food? Can we provide food? Do we need to provide just beverages? Sodas or coffee, whatever. Do we need to provide childcare? Do we need to do something in the evening or in the afternoon or in the morning? Can it only be weekdays or can we do something on the weekend? And really thinking through what are the multiple different ways to, bring the community in. But I would encourage you, there are professionals that can help with that. You can Google, prompts for community engagement. And I've got a resource. If you email me afterwards, I'd be happy to forward it to you, thrilled to forward it to you on the different levels of engagement, from communicating at people to fully involving people in decision making. All to say, I get you. It's not easy, but I think it's worth the effort. And some of it can be one-on-one. Some of it can be small groups. But making sure that the whole community is getting engaged, getting invited, again, really is key for improving student achievement overall. And when it comes to just some tips for staying out of the news, we encourage you to demonstrate respect and appreciation for everyone. Be aware of your facial expressions and of your action during public comment and during reports made to the board. Sometimes we all do this. We'll read something in the body language, whether it's crossed arms or rolling eyes or, somebody's picking up their phone. It might just be picking up their phone to, make notes or to Google a word, but it leaves that impression that somebody just checked out, right? So being intentional about demonstrating respect is important. Following your agreements for who speaks for the board. Probably your policy says that only the chair speaks for the board. But if individuals are out there saying things that are not really in line with what the board has said or will say, it can create a lot of confusion. And if you get the news media, on something, they love that. They love to divide and get minority opinion because it makes a bigger story. But it doesn't make a better district. So be judicious with email, text, and all forms of communication. I had a situation about 10 years ago where a reporter sent an email to me that he had intended for his editor And it was basically criticizing some comments I'd made about board development. And so I gave him a nice, helpful, polite reply. This is a good reminder to all of us. Never put anything in an email that you wouldn't want to have printed in the newspaper. You know, and I literally inwardly smiled and shrugged it off because people are going to have differences of opinion. Be careful what you put in an email or a text or any kind of communication. It's not always retold or reshared in the way we intended. Email is very dangerous, but texting is too. You know, you want to make a habit if communication is going to the board. All the board is BCC'd on things so that somebody doesn't make the mistake of reply all and essentially having a secret meeting of the board that the public's not privy to. Those emails, and I say this especially for new board members, you know, your private email, if you use that for school district business, it's subject to public disclosure laws. Somebody can request those records. You end up in a situation where a stranger is going through all your personal emails and deciding, you know, what needs to be shared and what doesn't. Avoid the use of your personal email for school business. Very similarly with texting, you know, it's too easy to create a group text. There are things that are legal, like you can say, you know, can we all get together for dinner on Friday night, March 24th? Totally legal to put that in a text or an email. But when you do, know that it's, you know, it's creating a potential scenario where somebody replies all and says, you know, that dork that spoke at the start of our board meeting last week, I just think he was out to lunch, right? You end up with a potential problem that can be a liability for the district. When it comes to, you know, your work on the board and certainly with communication, do everything you can to be very intentional, very clear, and very consistent. Again, not being predictable is not a compliment. And ultimately on the board, you know, you want to be thinking about how can we model the type of behavior as a board that we want to see happen in our classroom with our students, with our teachers, with our other staff. How can we model the behavior we want for them? One modeling is also in learning, reflecting, and growing. None of us know it all. I mentioned 2 books this evening. That second one, The Governance Core, highly would recommend that. It's about $25 on Amazon for other booksellers. But, you know, reading a book like that together as a board is just a phenomenal professional development and growth opportunity for the board. And it's modeling learning. It's modeling growth. It's also important, though, to reflect and to grow. I'm going to be with the board in just a few minutes where we're going to debrief some of their processes of things that happened recently. And it's a chance for that board to, again, model professional reflection. Well, I think this went well. I feel like we maybe could have done more of that. And it's really the kind of sense making, again, that you want to have for your students and your teachers. Any thoughts here as we kind of wrap up the things? I said a lot quickly, but any thoughts about what is your board currently doing well? Anybody want to throw something out there? What's your board doing well? There's got to be something. You started your meeting on time.
There. That's one thing.
We all showed up.
You showed up. That's big.
Brett, anything?
That's big.
Nothing?
Especially for a large board. What would your board think collectively, or you as an individual lady, what would you like to learn about or improve on this year? Just 2 or 3 things quickly. What would you like for the board to learn more about and maybe to improve on this year? I think there's a student rep sitting there. He must have some ideas.
And she, there's 2 board reps actually.
Anything?
Good.
Anything? Nothing?
Good. What do they think the board could improve on?
I think that Okay, give me a second. I think that the board, as a collective, could stand to be more open-minded and understanding, but most importantly, I think that they, again, as a collective, could stand to be significantly more respectful of each other and of everyone's time.
Thank you for that gift of feedback. And you're part of the board, right?
Yes.
So it's we. Yeah.
Yes, this is true.
Anybody else, something you feel like the board could maybe focus on as an area of improvement or an opportunity for learning more about? I think there was a great point made earlier, if the board's up at a 50,000 foot level, where people look like ants or probably even smaller from 50,000 feet, like, how does the board know what's happening on the ground and use that data to inform decisions they make on policy and strategic direction? That's something I would certainly encourage you to give some thought to. I feel like our plan time is up, and I know that you have reorganization and some other things on your agenda tonight. Thank you for allowing me to be with you. I'm going to stop screen sharing so everyone can see each other maybe better. But thanks for an opportunity to share. I hope something I said or several things I said were at least thought-provoking, or it's okay if they were disturbing. But I would encourage you to just continue to keep the level of candor that the young lady just shared, right? Keep that level of candor. Talk with each other. And not to criticize or condemn, but to build up and to encourage growth.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Phil.
you.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to the reorganization of the board. We've done the oath of allegiance and oath of office for elected board members. We had Kevin, Fernanda, Brett, Brent, and Paul. The next item of business is to elect the chair. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Lori Bertrand.
Second. If they need a second.
You willing to do it?
Are there any other
Worth
nominations?
asking.
We're already starting off better than we did last year, so yes.
Are there any other nominations for the position of chair? All those in favor of Lori Bertrand serving as chair of the Otter Valley Unified Union School Board, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Lori, congratulations.
Thank you.
Or sorry.
I know, right? Right? When you say that, now you're under, I'm going to be watching you. All right, so next piece of, thank you very much for your support, and we'll see what we can do this year as a board. The next item on our agenda is to elect the vice chair. Are there any nominations? Natalie?
Nominate Derek.
Derek? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other nominations? Hearing none. All of those that are in favor of appointing Derek as our vice chair, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, congratulations, Lori. Yes,
Hold on just a second.
sure.
Come here now. I don't know what just happened to my. Oh. Yeah.
We're not doing anything else if she can't take notes.
No. Well, look at my screen.
Okay,
Oh, no.
yeah, we're just,
Pausing.
I mean, and Barbara would probably, well, you might not
I know,
be
right?
the
I'm not
clerk, so-
currently clerk, so it's just a free-for-all. It's a free-for-all. Take your own notes.
We have the same computer.
Yeah. I know.
I was the first student rep and then he came along. I've been doing this for, well,
3 years?
no, it's been 2, I think.
When all else fails, close down.
Well,
Figured out.
I don't think so.
Figured out. Yeah. You come in as a sophomore?
Gremlins.
Did I?
COVID.
It was
all
COVID, yeah,
it was all
maybe.
virtual.
Maybe it was just,
Okay, my first meeting was the last virtual meeting that you guys had.
okay.
And then my second was your first in-person meeting back.
Natalie made it.
Feels like you've been on for free. There,
I second.
You seconded, thank you.
I think
Okay,
Charlene's, it's
all caught
working
up.
again.
Okay, you're all set then?
All set.
Yes, I'm
Okay,
there are
great.
a couple,
All right.
other ones.
Didn't want to
but
lose all that.
Yeah, for the most part.
Next item on our agenda is to elect a clerk. Are there nominations?
I nominate Barbara.
Okay. is there a
Second.
Thank you, Fernanda. Any other nominations? Hearing none, all of those that approve of Barbara Evelyn being our clerk, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, congratulations, Barbara, and be glad that she got her computer back up. All right, next one is to appoint RNESU board members. We need to have 3 on our supervisory union. So I would open up nominations. Barbara?
I nominate Lori Bertrand.
Second. Okay. Any other nominations? We need a couple more people. Yep.
I also nominate Rebecca Waters.
Okay, is there a second? Fernanda? Thank you. And we need a third?
I nominate Greg Bernhardt.
I don't know if I have the time right now.
Okay. It's up to you.
That would make 3 meetings. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
sound lazy or anything, I just, I don't know.
Okay, well.
I mean, yeah, I think it'd be probably better if somebody else did.
All right, other nominations? Yes?
I nominate Barbara Evelyn.
Okay, are you seconding? Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, all of those that approve Lori Bertrand, Becky Waters, and Barbara Ebling as our RNESU representatives, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Next piece of the puzzle is to elect a Stafford representative to the Stafford board. Currently, that is Kevin. Yep.
I nominate Kevin Thornton.
Okay,
I
is there a
sec-
second?
Seconded.
Fernanda?
Something you wish to keep doing it?
Actually, I like it, yes.
Yes. Seconded.
They offer good breakfast.
That's true, yeah.
Breakfast involved?
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that, do you want to get in on
Might,
this
I
now?
mean,
Okay.
The coffee cake is excellent.
Are there any other nominations? Okay, hearing none, all of those that approve Kevin to be our Stafford rep, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed? Okay, congratulations.
Question,
Yes, sir.
do we have a rep to the Hannaford Center?
We do not. We are not part of their board.
Okay.
And we only send kids for the diesel mechanic program, and there is there
There's
one other
two.
program?
There's two.
There is one other program, but I don't know what it is. But we are not a member of
There are only programs that Stafford doesn't offer.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. Communications with parents, citizens, and staff. Is anybody here that is not a board member who would like to speak to us? Okay. I have not seen any Let's Talk recently, although I did hear there's a lot of people that were not happy about having 2-hour delay today or a day off yesterday. So.
They don't feel they need to go through that stuff, though. They
All right, moving on, consent agenda. So there's a lot on the consent agenda tonight. I will tell you that I'm going to take off the regular meeting date and time location, which is J. Are there any other things to take off the consent agenda at this time? Okay, that means, so can I get someone to make a motion for the yeah? Yep.
Can I take something off just to clarify?
Yes, absolutely.
That's all I want to do. It's
Yep.
the board members to sign orders. I mean,
Okay.
new folks may know about this, but I feel like I even want to review.
All right, so we'll do that one. So G and J at this point. So can I get someone to make a motion to approve the consent agenda without items G and J?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All of those that approve the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. All right, we'll start with G. Do you want to make a motion to approve and then we can get,
Yeah, I move we approve the board members to sign orders.
okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, so your question.
I just wanted for clarification to remember how many board members need to sign the orders at the central office,
Okay.
how often it happens, that kind of thing, just.
So, yeah, so orders happen every 2 to 3 weeks. Pam Reed, our administrative assistant at RNESU, will email the board to let everyone know that board orders are ready to be looked at and signed. And the way we have it currently is that the orders need 2 signatures. One of those signatures needs to be a board member, and it can be any one board member. So whoever gets there first, essentially. And the other one is Jess,
Morse Davis,
thank you, who is the
assistant to the Director of Curriculum Instruction and
right,
Assessment.
and she also signs them. And that is our 2 signatures, because we usually have a hard time getting one sometimes. And what you do is when she sends out the board orders are ready to be approved, you just have to go to the central office where they will be. You look through them, you sign off on the yellow sheets, and that's pretty much it. If you have questions, you would ask. You'd start with Pam, but she would probably direct you to someone in the office, Brenda or someone else who could answer any of your questions. Okay?
Is the,
Yep.
is the central office during business hours still like locked and you knock on the door? Okay.
Yes. Yep. I think it's going to remain that way.
Okay.
Because unless they decide to get one of those things that you can press the button. I asked Pam if she wanted one, and she said she likes to do the walk. So.
And when people are signing them, they're basically looking through things however carefully they wish to, and then signing off on the sheet on
The
the
yellow
top.
sheets. Yep.
Yeah. Should I?
Yes,
speak to that?
absolutely.
I'm one of the few that goes up and does the review and signing, although after the fact, all those materials are available on the website. So if you look into the record-keeping aspects, you'll see my signature on the yellow pages that I have looked over those. But I would encourage everybody to take a shot or several times to take a look at it. It's very revealing what we spend our money on, and it's also educational in terms of looking at patterns. You can recognize when something's changed after a while. You've looked through the books. You have some expectations about a range of costs or whatnot. And things do pop up, and you can ask questions about those, and I think that's really healthy, and that's the whole point of it, is to kind of have another set of eyes, look over things, and it's useful. So I would encourage other people to do it as well. It's revealing. So.
Yes, sir.
I'll learn my way, I guess. So I'm new, so I've been here, for an hour and a half? And listen to Phil, that was great about all that. But half of who we represent had something to say about how we function. When is that something that the board discusses and how to address that and fix it? So I think of this as like a team. I do sports.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
a team guy. So her concerns were pretty loud, right? I would say. And I asked her, she's been here coming for like 3 years. A lot of the members have been here. So but I'm here to represent the youth and the community. And she's got a problem with how we function as a board. I'm a little nervous, that's why I'm so when's the proper, or how do you properly go about taking on that concern and discussing it and trying to work together? You know, like I said, I coach sports, so when you get a new team, it takes a while to learn how to gel and play the game fluidly to get a positive outcome. You know, you don't win everything. You know, it's just how it is. But I don't know. Am I okay coming out like this?
Yes,
or-
absolutely. No, you're absolutely fine. So there's different ways we could do it. We could have, because she brought up a concern such as that, we could make time at one of our second meetings of the month where we actually just talk about that and how we are gelling as a board, or how we feel things are not going right or going right. It hadn't really come up prior to this, I don't, at least not to this level. At this point, so, but we could do that at a second meeting of the month. We could do it at our annual retreat, which will be in August. We could just take 20 minutes out of every meeting and talk about it, and talk about how we felt the last meeting went, or, I mean, anything could really,
Yeah,
it's our decision.
Yeah, so it's hard to get to know people once in a while.
Sure.
I know that. I know a few people that that's what it is, but I think it's important to take a few minutes board discussion to get to know somebody. So, you know, something about their personally, you know, maybe what's their favorite music, so you get to be connected with them. So when they're talking, you're listening, but then you're possibly hearing them in a way that you can come up with, you know, resolve quickly and respectfully for somebody that might feel like it's a struggle for them to be heard.
Sure.
That's all.
Well, one thing we didn't do was actually go around the table, which we normally do at this point, and everybody gets to say who they are, because we do have new board members.
Sure.
So, let's get through the consent agenda, and then we'll do that.
That's because the chair in the beginning of the meeting was garbage.
That's true, she was.
I went right over the
Yeah. Leave it at that. No, but it's a good point. So, okay. So, anything else about G? Anybody else? Okay, so I would, all of those in favor of G, which is how we sign orders, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, thank you for that. The last piece of the puzzle, before I ask for a motion, is J, which is regular meeting date, time, and location. The last few years, we have always met on Wednesdays. Going forward, that is not an option. So, before anybody makes a motion, we really need to decide what day of the week we want to have our meetings on going forward. Monday does not work because Charlene is not able to be here, so it really needs to be a Tuesday or a Thursday.
May I ask why Wednesday is no longer an option?
Because our superintendent said she wouldn't be our superintendent if we had meetings on Wednesdays anymore. And I said, okay, we're not gonna have meetings on Wednesdays anymore.
And I have a fire meeting every Wednesday too, so I can only make one or the other, which really.
I say Tuesday.
Well, so that's the discussion. Someone needs to make a motion for either Tuesday or Thursday.
I make a motion for Tuesday.
Okay.
I second that.
Okay. Discussion.
Till 5 on Thursday, that doesn't work.
So, any discussion on that?
Tuesday.
We could still leave it
Yay,
at 6.
Tuesday.
I don't know, yeah, I know. So that would, so all of our meetings would be Tuesday going forward. Okay?
The first and third.
The first and third Tuesday, yes. Yep. Okay, any other discussion? I thought that was gonna be a lot longer discussion.
Does your
All right.
consent agenda
Or
have
shifting
the
it-
Thursday's the start of the week.
Yeah, I know.
Or shifting it beginning next meeting?
Next
or-
meeting, yeah, next meeting.
And would that be the first one in April?
Yeah.
That's the April
Yeah,
meeting.
yes, first one in April, which would be April,
Yeah,
yeah, because we had April,
you have to confirm your work plan because one of the meetings is during school
Right.
vacation.
yeah, yeah. So so our next meeting would be on Tuesday, which would be April 4th. Okay?
If you're not gonna be here for a meeting, if you don't know in advance, just let somebody know.
Yeah, so you should let the board chair know, just so that I know, because normally Charlene will ask me, and it's important that I know that we have a quorum, because we need to have at least 50%, over 50%, so I have to make sure we have at least 7 members here at all times. And there's been a couple times where we've been really close.
I think that's the vacation plan there it is.
Right, yeah. So, okay. All those in favor of moving our meetings to Tuesdays going forward on the 1st and 3rd, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, thank you for that. Now,
Oh, did Becky
I have
oppose?
a question to that.
Does that mean we're gonna change when we get our agenda ahead of time?
Yeah, so it's probably gonna be Thursday instead of,
Okay. And will that change when you want requests for things?
still
on-
3 days prior to when the agenda comes out, so.
Thursday.
So the agenda comes out Thursday, so I would probably want it by Monday before the agenda comes out. Okay? All right, so because of what you mentioned before, we're gonna start down there with Natalie. Oh, well, we can start on this side. Sorry, I did that on purpose.
Can we add something
I'll start.
to it?
I don't care.
Like,
Yeah, she's supposed to give some, we've done this before.
oh, you have?
Yeah, so essentially we should, we do it every year, but we didn't, we got off the wrong foot with doing.
It was good, though.
Yeah, I know. See, I thought so. All right, so just make sure you say something, fun, funky, weird. Weird, something cool about yourself. There you go. That was very cool.
My name's Natalie Steen. I've been on the board 2 years now, I think. I have 4 kids in the schools. I have 3 at Otter Valley and 1 still at Neshabie. I work at Middlebury College in the General Counsel's office, and I'm on 3 committees now here in town: Planning Commission, School Board, and Prudential Committee. So you may see my name a lot. I don't know, that's about it.
I'm Eric Pearsons from Pittsford. I got 2 kids here. You coached my boy. I've been on the board now 2 or 3 years, I don't remember. I was on the Lothrop board years ago, I forget how long. I'm a Pisces. And my favorite movie is in the Heat of the Night.
Oh, that's a good one.
There we go.
That's a good one.
Okay, I'm Barbara Ebling. I live here in Brandon. I've been on the board 5 or 6 years. I'm not quite sure. It's been a while. Let's see. I have 3 7th grade daughters here at Otter Valley. There's a story I can tell you later. Let's see. And one of them's in the paper this week because she's a rock climber. Actually, 2 of them are rock climbers. 1 made the paper. Yeah. I cancer because now I'm gonna go with that trend.
Now, what's your favorite
Nice,
movie?
set a nice trend.
And what's your favorite movie?
I don't have a clue. I have
All right,
no
well, now we
idea.
need to go back to Natalie.
But I really want to see everything everywhere all at once
yes.
because I
Okay.
loved Michelle Yeoh's acceptance speech, and yeah, I have 2 kids who she was specifically speaking to in her.
All right, so what's your
I'm a
sign?
Capricorn. I always say Star Wars. All of the Star Wars.
Brendan?
I'm Brendan McLaughlin. I'm a sophomore here at Otter Valley, and I've been on the board for about a year now. I'm a Leo, and my favorite movie, it'd have to be Step Brothers. Yes.
I'm Padua Gamba. I am a senior here at Otter Valley. I have 2 sisters in 7th grade. I've been on the board, as we discovered, for almost 3 years now. And I'm a Capricorn also. My birthday is the day after Christmas. Very exciting.
Mine's 2 days.
Really? Nice. And my favorite movie is Ocean's 11.
Paul Lathrop, live in Pittsburgh, married, 3 kids, been with my wife for 14 years. I've been coaching sports in the area for 11. I know some familiar faces in here from growing up around here. Yeah, there's a lot about me that I won't share. But, I'm grateful to be here at this point in my life where I can give back to the community at this level and grow with it and help my kids be a part of it. So, yeah. Once you get to know me, I'll talk more about it. That's that. My favorite.
What's your sign?
Oh, I'm a Libra.
Okay.
Yeah, you are. I'm a music guy. I like music. Movies are good, but I'm a music man, so.
Do you play any instruments?
No, I just listen.
Rock.
Rock, Godsmack, Megadeth.
Okay, there you go, all right.
Death
I like
Punch,
the art stuff.
So yeah,
Okay.
that's me.
Brent Scarborough. A little over 10 years on Brandon Fire Department. Was retired, just recently rejoined. I have 6 kids, ranging, big range. I go from 5 all the way to 27. And I have a 5-month-old grandson. Been married 27 years. Scorpio. And I go old school. I'm gonna stick with Smokey the Bandit.
Ooh, good one.
Nice.
He kinda likes
He's
the
bound
bandit.
down.
And he has some good lines. Like when they ask him what he does best, he says, "Show off." I kind of like those things.
Nice.
Derek Larson, I live in Brandon, married, have a student, actually a former student, graduated last year. I've been on the board, it's my 2nd term. Yeah. I'm a Taurus, and I think one of my favorite movies I keep watching when I notice it's on is The Italian Job.
That's a good one, too.
That's a fun one.
That's a
yeah.
very fun one.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. My name is Lori Bertrand. I'm from Sudbury. I have 3 kids, well, actually 4 if you include my husband. And we have a dairy farm. We have a mail route. I'm on various boards as treasurer. I have my own CPA business, and I'm board chair here. So I'm never wanting for something to do. I am a Leo. And my favorite movie, well, when I was little, my favorite movie was Grease. So, but I have now morphed into my favorite movie being the Keira Knightley movie of, what's that? Pride and Prejudice. And I also like Persuasion with Dakota Johnson. So those are my 2 favorites.
I'm Kristen. I am the superintendent. I only come here because you all make me. I've been married for a long time. I have 2 daughters. I'm an Aries. My birthday is coming up here in a couple of days, so just mark your calendars. My favorite movie is probably The Breakfast Club.
That's good.
I'm Greg Bernhardt. I think I've been on the board since we consolidated, which, what was that, 9 years ago?
2016.
It was? It wasn't 15? Okay.
Nope.
So,
We talked about it in 15.
Okay.
We became a consolidated board.
well,
in
I was on the
16.
board before it was consolidated as well, but, and I'm a Capricorn, so add to the Capricorns out there.
Nice.
And I'm gonna say, since we're in the age of great television, my favorite television show is Ted Lasso right now, which starts again tonight. So everybody should go home and watch Ted Lasso. Yes.
Pretty good.
Oh, so good. Yes.
Okay, Brett Mullen, Pittsford. 2 kids, 7 and 9. Moved to Pittsford with my wife in 2012. I don't know my sign. I'm not sure.
When's your
that's a bad
birthday?
thing or not. May 9th.
Gemini.
Sure.
It's either Taurus or Gemini. Actually, it might be Taurus.
I think it's Taurus.
Might be Taurus.
I don't know.
Sorry.
You can tell
Did you
me
get that
whatever, and I
reported?
won't know.
My
Taurus.
daughter's a Gemini, and she's May 23rd. So, okay.
Yeah.
I'll be in the Brandon Reporter.
Yeah,
Yeah,
as long as
that's
it's
right.
The reporter
That's right. That's gonna be important.
That's right.
All right, somebody- yeah,
What's your favorite
please.
movie?
Favorite movie, I'm going to go with Dinner for Schmucks.
Oh,
That's a good one.
Oh, really?
He's a Taurus.
Lie to me.
all right, Fernanda.
All right, I'm Fernanda. I feel like I'm doing this twice. So I have been in education for 39 years, recently retired as a school principal in Salisbury, worked for this district for 16 years as a teacher, librarian, and school principal at Sudbury. I have 2 children. both graduated from Otter Valley. As a matter of fact, my daughter and her best friend were the ones who went to the school board to have the rock climbing team approved as a sport in the school.
Get
And
out.
it makes me so proud that it's still going.
Really? Oh,
So that was her
Thank you.
passion.
Tell them
Yeah,
thank
it was
you.
awesome and loved it. And she is now a lawyer and works in Montpelier. And my son is an electrical engineer working in Boston. And let's see, what else? We live in Goshen. I came as a first-year immigrant in 7th grade without speaking English, so I have that in my experience. And I'm a Libra.
We just want to know your favorite movie for now.
Oh, so here's the problem, right, is that I love movies, and I cannot choose a favorite one. I study them, I watch them.
What's the last one you saw?
But, okay, so the one that I do go to when I need to be cheered up is French Kiss with Meg Ryan.
that's a
With Meg
great
Ryan?
one.
With Meg Ryan.
And
I
Kevin
love that
Kline.
movie, and I don't get tired of watching it. It's beautiful.
That's a good one.
Right? Yeah.
Hey, Kevin.
My name's Kevin. I don't believe in astrology. My favorite movie is the one I'm working on writing about the marble strike in Rutland, in West Rutland in 1935-36. I don't agree entirely with the metaphor that the board is a team, because we're also a governmental body and we're bound to have controversy. I'm going to be controversial later. It's not that I enjoy it, but that I think it's necessary. So you know, we have to air our disagreements. I think one thing I can work on that my wife talks about and that Padua mentioned is that my facial expressions sometimes, that sort of thing. So I'm going to try to work on demeanor, be better about that. But sometimes we have to argue about things.
Maybe we can all just close our eyes when you talk.
I wouldn't appreciate that.
All right, Charlene, you have to do yours too.
Well, Paul probably knows that there's controversy in teams too, because I remember Paul from my husband's Little League team. Long I've known Paul. Let's see, I work at Middlebury College in the admissions department for my real job. I have been recording secretary for the Otter Valley Board for longer than I can remember. I'm also the recording secretary for the Pittsford Planning Commission, the Brandon Planning Commission, the Brandon Municipal Select Board.
At RNESU.
In RNESU, yes. Let's see. I graduated from Otter Valley. My husband was the second graduating class from Otter Valley. All of my children graduated from Otter Valley, and I have almost all of my grandchildren graduating from Otter Valley. I've got two more. One's at Stafford right now, and the other is a senior, so I will have two more graduating this year. I'm an Aquarius, and let's see. I just watched Fools Rush In again. I love that.
All right. I feel like we shouldn't leave the
I know George should at least tell us what his favorite movie is. George!
George Field, I'm from the reporter. I'm a Taurus. And I'm an Otter Valley graduate with somebody else here. And I had four children go through the school. One's a lawyer, one's a doctor, one's a librarian, and one's a Renaissance man. And my favorite movie? That's hard. That's hard. There's a lot of good ones. Being There.
Yeah.
And the reason I love that movie is when I saw it in the theater, we watched through the credits, which I have a habit of doing. And at the end of the credits, there were outtakes that were, there were 10 or 12 minutes of outtakes, and there were four of us in the theater, and we laughed the entire time. Peter Sellers is the absolute bomb. That man is incredibly funny.
All right, Dan, you're up, because you're at a lot of board meetings too.
Dan Schmitz, I'm tech support, Aries. I'm not sure about movie-wise. I like Von Ryan's Express. And Bridge Too Far is pretty good. And Remagen, so different stuff.
And last but not least, best for last, Becky Waters.
Hi, I'm Becky, and I live in Whiting. I've been on the school board since I was pregnant for my baby, who is now 19. I have children that are between the ages of 19 and 31. I have a granddaughter who will be 3 on April 4th, and going to have a grandson born at the end of June. I'm an Aries. I work at the Addison County Parent Child Center in Middlebury and have worked there for 26 years, and we always have Otter Valley students. Currently we have 2. My favorite movie, I've been sitting here thinking, because honestly for the last 6 months, I think I've watched Frozen 150 times. So the only adult movie I can think of right now is My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, Princess Bride.
Yes.
Okay, yeah,
Oh,
Princess,
you
oh,
probably did,
definitely,
okay.
Princess Bride, yeah. Yeah.
Princess Bride trumps all.
It really does.
All right. So we're going to move on. Board Monitoring Report 4.5 should be in your packet. It's the Board Members' Code of Conduct. For new board members, this was what I talked about earlier at 5 o'clock. These are one of the policies in our governance, our policy governance policies that we monitor once a year or more often if we deem it necessary. Board members who have been on the board for a while will remember this one because it took us a really long time to approve it the last time. And I think it took us 3 or 4 meetings, and here it is again. However, what we did the last time was we took out any reference to conflict of interest, which is number 2 on this policy, because we have an RNESU policy, which is board member conflict of interest, and that would trump any kind of conflict of interest policy that we would have for OVUU. So, no need to have it in this policy. It is mentioned, though. So what we need to do is determine what each of these policies means, a reasonable interpretation, and then examples of where we are doing this and where we are not doing this. So, do you guys want to take it one by one and just go around? If everybody has it in front of them, everybody can take one. I hate to talk all the time. So, Barbara, would you mind taking number 1? And
I don't mind, I just have to call it up on my computer.
That's
'cause I
fine.
Print it out. So, anyone have any idea what page it is in the thing?
Oh, I don't. I'm sorry. All I did was print the code of conduct so I could write on it.
It's 29-ish.
29-ish? Okay. Ooh. 29.
This is a good policy to have right now because we are reorganizing and it's conflict of it's code of conduct, so it seems like a good segue tonight.
Okay. So you want me to read the board commits itself, that part, and then number 1, or just number 1?
Just number 1. I think the top part is fine.
Okay. Members must demonstrate loyalty to the ownership, unconflicted by loyalties to staff, other organizations, or any personal interest as parents or guardians. And you want me to do an interpretation?
Yeah, I would love to see if you have an interpretation of that or somebody can help you.
Well, to me, I interpret that to mean that, so the ownership are the people who elect us.
Community. Yep.
So we represent them, not just our own selves. And so have to take a broader view than just our own personal interests or agendas or whatever you want to call it. And how do we do this or not do this? You want me to do that as well?
Sure.
When we as a board reach out to the community and solicit input, I think that helps demonstrate that we're loyal to our ownership. When we don't follow it. I don't know if I have any specific examples of when we don't follow it. I think we all are prone to I mean, being human and thinking of whatever personally drives us and whatever personally affects us, which can occasionally, I guess, cloud how we decide things, but that I think is okay as long as we are still come back to the table and function as a board.
Who wants to do number 2?
I'm still trying to find it.
Can you ask questions about any of this stuff after?
Yeah,
or-
you can, while we're doing it.
How do we go about getting a broader view what the public wants? Do we do questionnaires? Do we go around do?
Well, that's a good question. I
Because I mean, we can think what
So
we
if I
know
look-
people want. We have no idea. So we
Well-
put that in there, but how do we actually find out?
Well, it's a good question. Usually we find out when they're angry about something. Bringing them together beforehand when they're not angry and just wanting to talk to them usually doesn't work very well. Unless it's a pressing problem that they really don't like or they don't come out.
So when you find out that there is a pressing problem, how do we go forward and find out the majority of the concern with people?
So that depends on what the pressing problem is. I mean, sometimes we'll ask the superintendent to take a look at it. Sometimes we'll take a look at it. It really depends on what the issue is. Yes, Barbara?
I just wanted to add that I think maybe when Kevin asked his question to Phil, it reminded me that a couple of years ago, I'm losing track of the timeline, we did a kind of a community survey. I think it was sent in emails to all the people involved in OV, like parents and students, and seeking some sort of like a priority of what you want to see happen in the district. What would be your biggest dreams? Remember, it was sort of where we narrowed down the idea that people wanted a middle school.
Right, we did all of that through our, what was it that you were in charge of? Task force, thank you.
We had like 576 people respond, which is
Right.
quite a bit.
And so that kind of, it's a few years back now, but it was designed to kind of get a read on what people felt was important. I feel like we did another one that wasn't just specifically about the middle school task force piece.
There were other aspects to it.
Yeah, of like, what do you like? What do you like about the district? What do you want to see happen in the district? What is a priority for you?
Is it always an email?
Lately it has been. That's usually where we get the most response, is when it goes into email. So if we were to call a meeting, you were at our annual meeting, and if you were to look around the room for the people that didn't have to be there, 3 people maybe.
Yeah, there's 3 of us. That was it.
Yeah, that was it.
I think it was 1 the year before.
Right. Yeah, and last year there was only 1, so we've actually increased it by 300%.
I asked the principal, I said, is it always this crowded? He said, I'm glad you found a seat.
Yeah, right, exactly. So, yeah.
I was gonna see if while you guys are going on, I was gonna look
But
to
you
see if
also
I could
sent
come
out
up with the
another one that was-
surveys that had gone out, just to
What is the thing
get
that
a little
Jean
bit more
sent out?
info about what was asked.
No, it was climate survey.
That was like 4 years ago now.
Oh, yeah, I mean, anyone could
They
be
can be
here.
here tonight.
Anyone could be here.
Yeah, at any time.
Yep.
That's it.
It's a
just
publicly
So
warned,
open meeting, yeah.
publicly
And
warned
they can
open
zoom in
meeting.
if they want.
Just like the man said, we're
Yeah.
on display for the public. And that's why this little owl thing keeps staring at me, because it's filming us too.
Right, you'll see it move on the thing so that people online can watch. She was talking.
There are people that watch us on TV. too.
Right, PEG TV is here, so
hard to
our
imagine.
meetings are aired on PEG TV. Too bad.
Ted
They've already
Lasso,
seen you.
OVU.
That's right. Yes. Right, yes we do, sorry. Moving on. So, who wants to take the conflict of interest policy, or the number 2, and go over that one? If you don't, raise your hand, I'll call on you.
I can read it.
Okay.
Is that what we're doing? Read it
Yeah,
out loud and then interpret it?
you may be
Yeah.
seeing if you
It
have
is the
what-
ethical and legal duty of all school board members to avoid conflicts of interest as well as the appearance of conflicts of interest. And I do believe that we sign paperwork.
Right, there is a conflict of interest policy that.
Right, and then there is a complete policy that lists the types of conflict of interest that might occur.
Okay. So, yes, everybody should have filled out by now the conflict of interest form, and handed it back to Melinda or to Kristen to get to Melinda, that says any kind of conflict that you might have with a vendor, you know, that you're part of a vendor, or, other conflicts that you might have that you would need to recuse yourself from. Okay, number 3. Derek?
Number 3, board members will be familiar with and adhere to those provisions of Vermont education law which define school board powers and govern board member compensation and public bidding processes.
Okay.
I'm wondering if that final phrase, public bidding processes, should be a conflict of interest or not there under code of conduct.
I think it just means we have to understand what those processes are.
Right, I think so. Yeah, it just means that we have to go out to bid if it's so much money, or if it's, you know, a
And we
large
get
project.
compensated based on what we voted on, right? Statute.
Okay.
We take an oath of office.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, compensation voted by the community at our annual meeting. Okay, and we do take an oath of allegiance and an oath of office when we are elected, as 5 of you know tonight. Number 4. So I'll read the first part. It says, board members may not attempt to exercise individual authority over the organization, meaning that we have to work as a board, not as an individual. A board member will do nothing intended to give the false impression that he or she has the authority to make decisions or take action on behalf of the board on the school administration. So essentially that just means that we act as a board. One voice after we vote. Once we vote, we're one voice. As such, members' interaction with the superintendent or with staff must recognize the lack of authority vested in individuals, except when explicitly authorized by the board. So that means essentially that we cannot go in as a single board member and say that you want to have all the data on the 3rd grade reading level based on yourself. That would have to come from the full board to say that we want to know everything that's going on 3rd grade level reading, or to go in and ask for all of the data from Brenda about what we spent all of our money on athletics for. That again would have to come from the board.
But we can't authorize Derek to be on the Hog Hill Committee representing the board.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, that's that.
Yeah. Okay. Members' interactions with the public, the press, or other entities must recognize the same limitation and the inability of any board member to speak for the board except to repeat explicitly stated board decisions. So again, if you go out into the public, what you're discussing with them are board decisions, not your own personal, well, not necessarily your own personal opinion on it, but what the board has decided. Except for participation in board deliberation about whether the superintendent has achieved any reasonable interpretation of board policy, members will not express individual judgments of performance of employees, volunteers, or the superintendent. So essentially that means that we're not going to go in and go to Mr. Ruppel and give him our own critique of how he's doing as principal. That is the job of the administration. The only person that we get to do that to is the superintendent. If we have questions about things that are going on in the individual schools, we can ask the superintendent for some clarity. Members will respect the confidentiality appropriate to issues of a sensitive nature. Essentially, that means that if we go into executive session about a personnel problem, it stays in executive session. You cannot talk about it outside with anyone other than what's a stated
Position.
motion. Yeah, stated motion or a motion that we've done on the board. Members will be properly prepared for board deliberation. That means when you get here, you've read all the materials that we've provided for the meeting for the night. And that you're ready to engage. And members will support the legitimacy and authority of the final determination of the board on any matter, irrespective of the member's personal position on the issue. So again, that's just talking about that the board's made a decision and you back that decision, even if you don't necessarily personally agree with it. That's what this says. Anything else you want to add to this?
Yeah, I want to say that I disagree with those interpretations, that you have to accept the board's decision. It doesn't mean you have to back it publicly and then, justify the board's decision to others. That there's still a right to say, I think it was a bad decision.
You have a right to say that in your individual opinion.
Sure, absolutely,
But
yeah.
as a board member, this is what the board chose.
Well, as a board member, you can speak as an individual. But you can have an opinion without, while making it clear that the board is a group.
You qualify that it's your own individual
Sure.
opinion when you're making it, and that
Yeah.
it's not the opinion of the board.
But you don't have an obligation to
Justify.
promote and justify the board's decisions.
Anything else? Are there any instances where you think we are not doing this? I did the reasonable interpretations, but I believe we are definitely not asking anybody other than the superintendent for any information outside of a board meeting. Is anybody going in and asking anybody for information? I don't think so. Okay? And,
Can you
Yeah.
say that again?
so you're not going in and asking for information from any member of the administration unless it is a board directive. That the board has asked for information regarding something. And we've asked the superintendent to get that information for us. I know you as a Hawk Hills representative might need something for a meeting, but those are usually provided to you by Melinda. So, but you're not going in wanting to know all about.
Well, the other night I went in and asked Mr. Ruppel if I could see the locker room, because we had that conversation in our last meeting, and I wanted to follow up on it. But I don't think that's overstepping. I checked with,
And you were here for the annual meeting.
I was here when we went and looked at it that night. You could have looked at it that night. So
Yeah.
You just saw a different night.
yeah,
Yep.
And we did went and looked at it.
but technically I should work through the superintendent and say, I want to take a look, I'm going to check with Mr. Ruppel, blah, 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 just to follow steps.
It's kind of an interesting question, really, because at the last meeting, we seemed like we determined that we wanted to get a better idea of what the facilities looked like. I have no idea.
Right,
Other than
and I
asking
did
my
say that we
kids.
would bring it back in April.
Yeah,
'cause we
so-
did-
And it's
we
coming,
wouldn't
and
have
the
time
architect,
to-
I mean, I can follow
So-
up, just because I brought it up, but it's off topic. But an architect is looking at the situation, so there's something being done.
And I interpreted it to be, it was the will of the board to understand what the facility actually looks like. So if an individual reached out and said, hey, I want to take a look, I say yes.
That's right.
Right.
Are we able to make changes to this right now?
Yeah.
For number 1, it says, or any personal interest as parents or guardians. I mean, that's limited. Should it be for family members, or, I don't know, because everyone's role in this board isn't as a
Parent or guardian.
parent or guardian.
Yeah, I don't have kids here.
As an example.
Well, that actually is better that you don't have kids here because you don't have that personal interest.
If there's not an undue.
That's the way I look at it, is that we
Yeah.
have a personal interest when our kids are here.
Correct.
Maybe when our kids are not here, you're looking out for everybody. I don't know.
Well, yes and no. 'Cause
Would it be
I pay
better?
$100 a month to send my kid to private school, because I couldn't imagine putting him in public school right now.
Okay.
I say, there's things I want to change, because I think the public schools are way off the board with things they're doing.
Okay.
They're lost in space, honestly, in my opinion.
All right, well, you'll have to expand on that at some point.
Up to.
Yeah, we look forward to talking to you.
Not tonight, though.
No, it's okay.
The other one I had a comment on, and I just lost it, was the one about confidentiality.
Oh, yeah.
For
Members will respect the confidentiality appropriate to issues of a sensitive nature. That one?
Or as required by law. Sorry, it's my legal head. It's like, because there's FERPA issues and other things, not just sensitive issues.
Does anyone want to add that as well?
Sure.
Yeah, that one sounds good.
All right, so all of those that approve adding to issues of a sensitive nature or required by law,
Required by law.
please raise your hand or say
Are we approving of
Voting,
it?
do you need a motion?
Well, you need
Is
a
it-
motion, so, yeah, well,
I'll
Natalie
second
made
the
the
motion.
motion and you're seconding. Okay, any discussion around it? Okay, all of those that approve of adding to number 5, appropriate to issues of a sensitive nature or required by law, please signify by saying aye.
Or as required by law, right?
Or as required by law. Thank you. All those that approve?
Aye.
All those that don't approve? Perfect. Thank you.
Do we need a motion to fix the horizontal lines on 4?
Yes. No.
Just checking.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Anything else that you want to add to this specifically?
I have a question, Lori.
Yeah.
It's not adding anything. My question is if a board member is, if this isn't being withheld, so it says, it was noted that not all board members abide by this portion of the policy. How many portions of the policy can a board member not agree with before, and what would we do about that?
So essentially, if you felt that a board member was not abiding by our code of conduct, there are different things we can do. The board could take the action of censoring that board member, meaning that they're not allowed to talk. There's other things that could be done. We really haven't gotten to that point. But there are things that we can do as a board to make that stuff stop. And I could look into more, but one thing I have looked into is censure. And that was in regard to talking to a lawyer, so. But it's not a good thing to do because it just brings negativity to the board. Okay. All of those that approve our reading of this policy, can I get a motion to approve? Okay.
Second.
Thank you. All of those in favor of this policy, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you. All right, moving on. Board vacancies. As everyone should be aware, our school director for Leicester did not have anybody running for it. However, the one person who did not win re-election, Jeremy Gildrian, is a Leicester representative. I did reach out to him and ask him if he would be willing to serve in that capacity for the next year until it would go up for election again. And he did indicate that he is willing to fill this vacancy for us. So the question is that the will of the board, or do you want to put it out and see if there's other members of the community willing to serve on the board?
Nobody else ran.
That's absolutely true, and I would have said that, but
Nobody else ran, why not just let her have it?
Okay, so are you making that motion?
Sure.
Okay, is there a second? Okay. Any other
Sorry, I
discussion?
didn't hear the motion.
The motion was to approve Jeremy Gildrian as our representative to Leicester. Appoint. Fernanda. Okay. Any discussion? All of those that approve to appoint Jeremy Gildrian for the term of 1 year until next election cycle as our Leicester representative, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay.
He was actually the third name on the ballot, right?
He was for the
I
at-large.
wrote his name in on Lester because I knew he was from Lester.
So appointed. All right, we will let Jeremy know.
And the Leicester Select Board.
And we will let the
Statute.
selector, yes, per
Just a
statute.
failure to communicate there, I think.
Okay, OVUU policy for action. Our first reading to approve is policy JEF, elementary intra-district choice transfers. So this is revised and renamed. Can I have someone make a motion to approve and then we will talk about it? Well, this is something that we've already talked about a little bit as a board, actually a lot of as a board. We'll pull you guys up to speed, but I'd like a motion before we speak.
I move that we accept policy JEF, elementary inter-district choice transfers.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, so a little bit of background. When we became a unified district, we wanted to offer choice to all elementary school kids, meaning that any kid in any elementary school, as long as there was room, who wanted to go to a different elementary school, could do so. So that has been in place since 2017. I don't think we did it the first year. We did it in 2017. Going forward, or what's happening now, is that we're finding that a lot of kindergartners, a lot of preschool students who end up going to Neshabie are staying at Neshabie and not going necessarily to their individual school that they might to, whether it be OCA or whether it's Pittsford. And so the Superintendent Hubert has realized this, and I will let you finish the discussion. 'Cause
Yes,
you know
it's
more about it.
creating some significant inequities both on the part of Leicester, who's losing students, and the receiving schools who are having numbers that far exceed our class size policy for the minimums and maximums. So for instance, Neshabie's having kindergarten class sizes of 22, 23, which is skirting above and a lot for a 5-year-old. And OCA might, for instance, only have 5 or 6. So I brought, I think 2 months forward, or 2 months ago, consideration to, at that point I said, let's revise the policy or potentially do away with the policy. We had some great conversation about, we don't want to take away parents' rights to have conversations. There's a lot of reasons why a family might really want one school or one program over another. So went back to the drawing board, talked to the principals, looked around at area districts. What I recommend is we change the language from school choice to an intra-district choice transfer. So instead of saying school choice opens in March, get your applications in, what we're saying is that intra-district choice is available to any of our students in our elementary schools at any point based upon a variety of reasons. So those reasons might be, I live in Leicester, my kid goes to OCA, but I moved to Pittsford, I want my kid to stay at Leicester. Well, there you go. You fill out the application to be able to stay at Leicester. It might be that your 5th grade son went to Neshabie, so you want your kindergarten son to go to Neshabie. So there's a bunch of reasons why. What we would request or require is, first of all, that folks at any point in the year when they want to request an intra-district transfer, they would fill out the application, and the application is asking for the reason. Reasons for the request might be their financial condition changed, their educational condition would be improved. For instance, that class size is only 6, my kid needs more peers, right? Like that's a valid reason. So they would go through the potential reasons for the request. It would also go to the building administrators to be able to have conversations about class size, right? What happens to the, for instance, Neshabie class size if we accept this student? So it kind of basically beefs up the policy. And for preschool students who are requesting to make a transfer, we are going to require them to go to their school of origin, take a tour, meet with the principal, do their screening there before they make a request, right? So we're having a lot of kids request based on, oh, I went here as a 3 and 4-year-old, I just want to stay here, and that's harming the school of origin. So it basically is not taking the policy away, it's revising it. And again, we believe very strongly in all of our elementary schools, all of our programs, so we want it to be an intra-district transfer, not a choice of one school over another.
Is the Neshabie preschool, is that an all-day program?
It's not, it's just way bigger, so a lot of times they take kids from all of our other schools.
All of our preschool programs are 10 hours a week.
Okay.
Any other?
Is there any concern that families could feel ambushed by this, that, our 7-year-old just stayed at NESU, now we have to fill out an application, why is this, blah, 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 blah?
Yeah, so if we're gonna grandfather kids in, if they're in, we're not going to make them move out. Yeah.
So if they have siblings at NESU, then?
If they have siblings and that kid hasn't entered that school, they're still gonna have to fill out the intra-district request, but the request will be, hey, my 7-year-old goes here. I don't wanna send one kid there and one kid there, right?
Okay, Greg, sorry.
Is this just language just to make it a tad bit more difficult, or is this, it just makes me nervous because one of the things we, as a district, when we consolidated, really, this was one of the big selling points. And so I just hate to have us 7 years later change something that allowed us to come together, and there was a whole host of reasons why, and we've kind of, my kids have graduated from high school, so I have really I'm not really looking out for like my own kids or anything. We all own the buildings. Like, I live in Leicester, but I own Lothrop as much as somebody in Pittsford at this point, because as a district, we all own all buildings. So it just feels tough if we're gonna put up too much of a barrier for people to get that. Having said that, I totally get that there's a logistical nightmare going on, and that we just don't have the room at Neshabie to accommodate and just have like OCA disappear. Not to say I would ever want that to happen. That's in my town, but there's a lot of moving parts to this. I totally get that. I'm just nervous if we move too much away from school choice. Is it just a language thing is my question, or are we moving away from that? And
well, it's more than a language thing. It's we no longer, so, and I've done a ton of research on the merger and why it happened and when it happened and what that meant for the programs. When the merger happened, Leicester was one thing, Whiting was one thing, Sudbury was another. It was a completely different program. We at that point had options for our families to be able to choose programs. We no longer have programs. So our K-6 program is identical in theory in Leicester, Neshabie, Lothrop, and Barstow even for RNESU. So what we're trying to do is simply realign and have parents, have us as a school district say, yes, you attend your school of origin, unless there's a legitimate reason for you to want to transfer. And again, if you look at that, there's a bunch of reasons why a family might ask to do a transfer.
And if somebody just doesn't want the small class sizes,
that's a
allow
reason.
them. Okay.
Well,
So
I will allow them up until a point, right? So if we say, yes, I accept that as a valid reason, 5 kids is not a big enough peer group for your student, you need more, we understand that. We have to wait and look at the Neshabie class sizes. One of the things that's happened is...
Which we had to do before anyway.
Exactly. So all it does is make clearer the language, because right now, the way the policy exists is I don't have flexibility. There's no wiggle room. If someone's making that request, they're in. And then 5 more kids move into Neshabie's kindergarten, I can't make them go to Pittsford. And so then all of a sudden, Neshabie's kindergarten's 27. And then I'm coming back to the board and saying, hey, can I get another kindergarten teacher? It just allows us a little bit more structure to the conversation. And if I'm being completely honest, we have seen for the last 3 years a trend of pre-K kids. It's not about, right, it's about pre-K kids being comfortable as a 3 and 4-year-old. And we're saying, give your sending school a chance. Go take a tour, meet the principal, then come back and have a conversation.
Natalie?
I think also if you look at the form, it's not onerous, it's just check marks. They just check it out.
We make them fill out an application now, we just don't really make them give us a reason.
Yeah, I don't think that's very hard at all to fill out. And also, 7 years, things change, so we can't really, something worked 7 years ago, we can't make it fit to make it keep working, right? It's not working, so I'm okay with change.
And to Kevin's point, we will notify all parents and put it on the website, and we will say, hey, your kid's grandfathered in. You don't, if you're already at a school that isn't your school of origin. We're not trying to hurt families. We're just trying to not close down schools. We're not trying to unfairly burden Neshabie and/or OCA by not having a little bit tighter system because our school has changed since 2016.
Well, and it hurts our kids too, because you're putting too many kids into a classroom, and then, yeah, it hurts the other kids as well.
Mariana, did you have a question?
No, I guess I'm just hearing that it impacts resources. So it's not just the building, it's the resources that are in that building, right? When you need another teacher because your classes are too big, in the class next door, in the town next door, has too few. That impacts the resources available. So it seems like a reasonable step to be looking at how those classes are coming together.
Yes, Brett.
I have some thoughts, but first I have some questions. So, as of today, if, I don't know, my third grader broke up with her boyfriend and they were in the same class and just couldn't do it anymore, what would be the policy today? Would she have to wait until next March?
Technically, you've missed the school choice deadline.
Okay. So that's how it would work today.
So today we have an application process. I want it to roll because during a year there might be.
Well, I didn't know if there was like another program that would kind of cover in that situation or what we would do. So that's question one.
I would say you're in third grade. You shouldn't have a
Or it leads to such a dramatic thing.
I wasn't using a real life scenario here. So the new policy would allow for that to happen at any time. Second question, have you or anybody done any research to figure out if this may affect kind of, it's kind of like a benefit, I guess, in the community, right? So, I mean, if someone was looking to move, that might be something that appeals to them. So I think maybe there's a question of if that affects people's property values. I don't know, probably not a lot, but it's a question. Is that been considered?
So it shouldn't, because many schools have an intra-district policy, so we still have an intra-district policy. Again, if you ask, we're just asking that you ask. It isn't a lottery, there needs to be a reason why you're wanting to transfer.
You had thoughts?
Now I'm getting my thoughts,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
I think that we, and not as a board, I mean we as Vermonters, are really failing both our parents and our kids at the preschool level by not having an expanded preschool program. And I think it's a shame that we have to change a policy to kind of fix that problem. So I guess I'm not really a huge fan of changing the policy, because I think that we still have a problem that we're not addressing. And that's that our children and our parents of young children don't have access to a program that really meets everybody's needs.
But the preschool programs are all the same, right?
They're all 10 hours
in our
a week.
district.
They're not full day. I think that's
Right.
what you're alluding to. You would like to see full day programs.
Well, it makes it hard, and I can understand why
Yeah.
people are looking to bring them to other schools, because
Sure.
work schedules and trying to juggle daycare and everything else. I mean, it sucks, frankly.
Well, and the OCA's preschool, Whiting's kind of far out there. There's a lot of our parents who work Brandon, Rutland side that request to send their kids to Neshabie or Lothrop preschool, simply because they work in this direction.
Right, but I want to make them, because I'm a little confused as to this would not change anything to do with preschool. You would still be able to go to preschool wherever you want.
I understand that.
Okay.
What I'm saying is, maybe I'm making some assumptions here, but
Okay.
it feels like the problem that we have is students go somewhere, they get comfortable there, they want to stay there. Which is understandable if you're
Okay.
3, 4, 5 years old, right?
Sure.
But the reason why that's happening is because of parents trying to juggle preschool hours with their own personal schedules, right? So, and for that reason, I would say I'm not a fan of changing this policy because I don't think that it addresses the core issue.
So I will tell you that, and take it for what it's worth, is that my kids both went, all three of my kids went to Neshabie, but then we had to go back to Sudbury for kindergarten. I don't think it was detrimental to them. I mean, I warned them, we talked about it, new school, new friends, blah, 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 you know. I think it's also in how you bring it forth to your kiddo as to how they will feel going to another school as a kindergartner. So it's not just about being comfortable and wanting to stay, it's also, you know, that would be my opinion.
I don't think that many schools in Vermont have preschool programs in their schools. Few do.
Very few.
And for those, yes, it's lovely, right, that they can just go on, but very few do. Most of them, preschool is in someplace else, and they begin kindergarten with a new cohort of peers. So it doesn't necessarily impact that idea that you're following, you know, you've made friends and now you can be with them necessarily. Because I would say probably the majority of schools don't have preschools in their schools.
I would also add I have 4. My youngest didn't go to preschool at Neshabie. I took him to Middlebury, Mary Johnson, because it just didn't work for my work schedule. And then he went to kindergarten, he was fine. I mean, it's such a young age. They transition easily.
Derek?
The place where that problem is being addressed is in the legislature right now. I mean, there's current bills being discussed to address that problem, because it is a bigger statewide problem. Yeah.
Aren't they including private schools in that whole thing too?
Well, that's another discussion that's going on too, it's related, yeah.
I did read something though today about pre-K and that they were scrapping that wording to do full day.
Digger reported, or
Yeah.
just reported that they're going to put it under study.
Right, but they're not going to do it right now.
Like universal full-day pre-K.
Right, is off the table at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, and it
Still
harmed,
don't get
the bill as the draft, had the potential to do a lot to support 4-year-olds, but it didn't really look at the funding, it didn't really look at the capacity, and it had the potential to harm a whole slew of 3-year-olds who would no longer have access and get phones out.
So in a particular.
But I will say, Brett, that RNESU has tasked us with looking really hard at improving pre-K across the system.
It's after 8 o'clock.
We're making a motion to extend, we don't have much left.
Okay, I'll make a motion to move the question.
Okay? Someone want to second that? I second that. Okay. All those in favor of moving the question, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, so we've moved the question, so we're ready to vote. So at this point, we're ready to vote, I believe. So all of those in favor, this is the first reading, so it comes back again, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so all of those in favor of policy,
JEF.
thank you, JEF, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, and all those against? Okay, ayes have it. Thank you. And again, it'll come back in 30 days, so we will discuss it again, probably at our May meeting, actually. So,
30 days.
yeah, it has to be 30 days between readings.
I just couldn't believe May would be that soon.
I know.
Well, I know, right? Well, that's true. Well, it'd be late April, but we won't discuss it then. Can I get someone to make a motion to extend our meeting for like 20 minutes? Thank you, Fernanda. Is there a second?
I've got about 10.
Okay. Everybody who agrees with extending our meeting for about 20 minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. So, the next piece on our puzzle is the RNESU board update, which there isn't one because we haven't had a meeting this month because we needed to reorganize, so that will be next week. Review board annual work plan. The one thing we need to talk about is our meeting, which would now be April 18th, falls during school vacation. And so the question is, how many people are planning on going away for April vacation? Okay. Anybody? So it looks like we could still have a quorum. The question is, do you want to move the meeting up, or do you want to leave it where it is?
It's tax day. Isn't that tough for you?
Well, it's tax day, so everybody can go out drinking with me after we have our meeting.
Well, maybe not everybody.
I know, well, right, yeah.
Maybe I will go on
You can have
vacation
soda,
if there's some fats on the table.
So I need to know what your pleasure is on that.
If you move it, can we ask that it be moved up and not back because we need to get summer facility plans?
Right, so if we're gonna move it up, we're either gonna do April 11th, which would be the very next week after April 4th, that makes me think we need to leave it as April 18th. Or, what? Yeah, here. No, we do it here.
How many people said they were leaving?
4. We still have a quorum.
Can you?
That's an important meeting, though.
Can you?
I would want it to be either before or after.
All right, so you want to do April 11th? We'll have back-to-back meetings. Everybody in favor of April 11th?
I'll have to zoom in.
Okay. Can you raise your hands for April 11th? You're available? Okay, and yeah, that's fine. Okay, so we'll go with April 11th then. So April 4th and April 11th.
I'll be here for that one then.
Okay.
You'll be here for the 11th, great.
And then, so our next piece of the puzzle is Superintendent's informational report.
I'll go fast since I was so chatty about the policy. Oh, I've got it here. Just for your reading pleasure, there are a lot of legislative updates, so just kind of wanted to draw your attention. There's a lot that's kind of hot happening right now. The first one is School Construction Aid Task Force. They're specifically taking a look at school construction aid. A lot of that has to do with PCBs, which you'll see is the second bullet. Senate Education also introduced a bill to address school safety, and they're really basically asking people to up the options-based response drills and how emergency operation plans look, how they are enacted, and how they're public-facing. So just a lot more. It also has a level of requirement for independent schools, which is new, and also requires folks to have a behavioral threat assessment team, which we do already have. A bill prohibiting firearms and deadly weapons in school and on school property, which would impact anyone hunting on any OVU properties. So that is kind of up right now. And it would require an exception for someone to use it by law enforcement officers and a signed approval of the school board. School foods program, they're looking to extend free universal breakfast and lunch for another calendar year. That's obviously really helpful for kids. It is challenging for school districts when they do that, though, as we still need families to fill out the free and reduced forms to grab a hold of entitlement funds. So it's, kind of a tricky thing, but we're happy if that gets passed. As Brent mentioned, there's quite a lot right now that's impacting Barstow, for instance, about Vermont's voucher system and private school tuition. There is the new public pre-K, which got struck down as it was written, and it got enacted into a study since I drafted this. And then the House Education is working really hard on workforce development, which would also beef up CTE programs and offerings, which would be fabulous for OVU students and communities. So we're really hopeful on that. And that's it.
Great. The one thing I forgot, because I didn't write it down, was your motion, Kevin, about exiting the VPA. So, floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. So just to remind you, since it's been a while, the resolution's as follows, that Otter Valley Middle and High School withdraw from the Vermont Principals Association until such time as the VPA recognizes the right to free speech and the value of dissent in a democratic society. I want to preface this by saying I really hate this culture war stuff. Some people might think that I invite this, but I really can't. I really don't like it at all. My agenda that I'm very open about on this board is that I think our current high school education system is failing, and that I think we need to swing to more toward a system that encourages and helps students who aren't going to attend college through CTE training and other programs such as MOOSLMU. That's what I want to accomplish on this board. And in some ways, this sort of thing gets in the way. But we've got a crisis right now. It's less than 48 hours old. And for those of you who don't know the background, that the VPA expelled Mid-Vermont Christian School for refusing to play, for what they did was they forfeited a playoff game against Long Trail because Long Trail had a trans student. So I'm going to read a statement. I'll make it, it's fairly short, I'll make it fast. And I wrote this down because I wanted to be clear about what I said. So starting out with that, I want to be clear about the issue here. It's not whether trans students should have the opportunity to play girls basketball. It's whether anyone can be allowed to object to a trans student playing a girls' sport, or indeed argue that trans women have unfair physical advantages in women's sports. All Vermont Christian did was forfeit a game. The CVU girls basketball team won 2 games by forfeit this year when Mount Mansfield and Essex, respectively, refused to play CVU over a matter of principle. Neither Mount Mansfield nor Essex were punished by the VPA for their forfeits. 2. The VPA is taking the position that Mid-Vermont Christian's action was so hateful and repugnant, so far outside the bounds of acceptable discussion, that Mid-Vermont must be banned and shunned in all sports and activities, presumably forever. That it's a blanket ban with no time limit on it. It's not a suspension. This is a patently dishonest stance on the VPA's part. Whether trans athletes should be allowed to participate in women's sports is a heated topic in multiple sporting organizations, nationally and internationally. The 2 most famous trans athletes in the world, Caitlyn Jenner and Renee Richards, have both concluded that athletes who have gone through male puberty have unfair advantages when competing against women. Multiple millions of people agree with them. To take the position that this topic can no longer even be discussed is to attempt to silence and intimidate millions of reasonable, fair-minded people. Put simply, it's an attempt to punish and censor people for their ideas. That's why it's imperative that this board stand against the VPA and for free speech. 3, we have to ask, too, what's next? Can we expect Rice and Mount St. Joseph to be expelled from the VPA for teaching Catholic doctrine about sexuality in their religion classes? More importantly for us, our board, will we be expected to suspend or otherwise punish any individual students who may refuse to take the field against a trans opponent, or who express an opinion such as men should not be allowed to play women's sports? The recent incident in Randolph, where a student was suspended for saying just that, suggests that we should fear the worst for the future of free expression in our supervisory union. The VPA's harsh punishment of Mid-Vermont Christian confirms it. 4, the fashionable current notion of tolerance through coercion is a curse. We are witnessing the construction of a cultural infrastructure of censorship characterized by a totalitarian urge to punish and silence opposition, and I mean that nationally. Blinded by self-righteous exultation, the VPA has willingly joined the purge of the politically unclean. We should stand against them, despite painful potential consequences. And if this passes, that means no spring sports. It's imperative that we teach our students, through our actions, that the basis of all liberty is freedom of conscience and free speech. That's what I think is at stake here. That's why I'm making this motion. Thank you. And here's the record.
Yep.
So, you're making the motion that we withdraw from VPA.
Yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
Should we discuss it? Okay. So, as you alluded to, if we pull out from the VPA, there would be no sports at Otter Valley, correct?
No sports at Mid-Vermont Christian apparently as well.
Well, that's true. I'm just asking. No
Yes,
sports
yeah,
at
no,
Otter Valley.
that's what it would mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
As well as, I don't think we have an active robotics club, but.
Debate, spelling, participation in the Vermont Drama Festival.
So no baseball, no lacrosse.
Right. No theater
softball.
this weekend. Okay.
I'm just curious how you think that would help my two sons who play baseball. What would they learn from them?
They would learn that free speech is a fundamental value in our society and that it's worth standing up for.
Are there other ways that I could teach my kids to do that other than having to give up baseball? Or basketball? Or, you know, because this will go into the fall, right, and summer. So I just feel like I understand your stance and I understand the importance of it, but I also feel like you're punishing the kids from sports. I mean, yeah, I hear you. I don't know if I agree with what they did, but I don't want to punish my boys from playing baseball and playing sports. I just feel like maybe there's a better way to do this instead of making our kids sacrifice.
Isn't there hope that more people jump on board and maybe it doesn't end it, maybe it comes around?
I don't think that's going to happen personally.
Well,
I bet there's a lot of schools who don't want their kids to miss out on sports. I mean, what other option is there?
I don't know anybody who wants it.
We're not back and forth.
Sorry.
I'm the chair.
I was just talking.
No, I know, that's right. So that's why you talk through me. So here's my question to everybody, and to Kristen, because you would know. If we were to, so that we don't go all the way to canceling our entire spring, and it's not just sports, it's also theater, it's also spelling and everything else. We're talking about all extracurriculars, practically. What if we send a strongly worded, kind of what you've already written to them, saying that we don't agree with their stance and that we feel that they should change it based on all of the things that you've provided. And I don't care if you all feel that you want to put it as an editorial, to put it out in the public so that everybody sees it, but I don't want to take the stance of hurting our kids, especially when they've worked so hard to get where they are, because they will feel that it is a punishment to them as well. Yes, Barbara.
So it's more of a procedure, kind of a question than getting at the core issue that's being debated, because that's big and huge, and I don't want to tackle that now. This isn't an item that was on the agenda, and it kind of got put on at the last minute, so there's no parents here who could weigh in on what they think we should do, which, remember, we represent them. And as Natalie pointed out, there's probably a lot of people in this community who might feel similarly about having their kids play sports, regardless of how they also may agree with what Kevin is saying. Because honestly, I didn't know this had happened, so this is the first I'm hearing about it. I haven't even had time to process this, so I can't even really vote on this in a feeling like I am informed. Okay. So, which is why it's really great if we can get these things onto an agenda kind of the way that's supposed to go on the agenda, even if it's a fresh thing that just happened and we want to take action. I mean, I get that it's an emergent issue. It's important. But to take an action now is a different thing than like, here is the information, here is what we should talk about, or here's like, I'm really upset and let's talk about this and get this on an agenda so we can really,
we are meeting again in 2 weeks.
Because it's not to shove it under the rug, but I couldn't possibly vote on this in any kind of informed way. This,
okay. Brett,
Go ahead.
Brett, you had your hand up.
Is there any other way, because I'm new, to get other schools involved, like part of our conversation? So it's
The only other way you'd want to get boards involved, and they only meet, some of them only meet once a month. So, and we've probably missed that boat for most other boards, honestly. But yeah, we could put out feelers to other board chairs. I'm gonna go to Greg, and then we'll go to,
I think it would be completely irresponsible of us to do anything to take away anything from the kids. I just think this is an absurd idea. It's one thing to do what Lori's talking about and talk about free speech, but we can't just sit back and just take away something from their educational experience. And honestly, there's some kids that sports are the things that like keep them going. Debate, whatever it is. And I just, they just went through COVID and just had school ripped apart from them. And here we are suggesting on some, principled idea to take away something that's not even coming from them. It's absurd. So I have no doubt that our board would make the right decision here, but I don't even think we should entertain this like more than what you're saying, which is to write a letter and keep this among adults, not have collateral damage on kids' lives.
Brendan?
I know it's very new, this specific event, but I'm just curious, has anything like this, to our knowledge, occurred before? And if so, what was the context? Do you know, Kevin?
I don't know the answer to those questions. I doubt anything like this has ever occurred before.
And the end result, the hopeful end result would be that if the board were to vote to withdraw from the VPA, that other schools would follow, and eventually the VPA would reverse their decision.
Okay to cross talk on?
I'm gonna go, so you had a question.
I'm just curious, yeah, question.
Yeah, I know, so the question is,
What's the end result? What do we hope? What would the
right,
board
well, I think
want
the end
to happen?
result is, what Kevin wants is them to reverse their decision. He feels they're violating, First Amendment rights. I'm gonna go to, Paul, and then we're gonna go to you.
Yeah, this is a big subject. We're not going to resolve it here. That's at the big levels. But as a coach, my mindset is our first teachings come at home. That's where you need to be teaching your kids. You can teach them about free speech, and then, if we're lucky enough, we're in tune with what's going on, to have conversations with our children as they grow. This is what's out there. This is what you're going to come across. But how to, observe, adapt, and overcome is something how I coach. If I had to take my baseball team and I had to play a team, or coach a basketball team, we'll just use basketball team. As a coach, knowing my team, I built a relationship with them. We know what the possibilities are out there, and if it comes to our attention that this is what's going to happen, I would take that challenge on. And if my team beat that team, it's how proud of the kids I'd be proud as a coach. Your kids would be proud. It's growth. Believe me, I understand, but like you cannot punish the masses, the kids that put in the day-to-day, the parents that are out throwing the ball with their kid, kicking the ball around. You can't take that away from them because of free speech. So we teach it a different way. It's a big one. I get it, man. I do, but we cannot punish all the kids. You take that challenge on, okay? You take it on, and if you lose, you lose. It's just a game. Losses are great because you can learn from it, because the best thing about sports, there's another game waiting, and then there's another one. The game doesn't stop, never will, but you adapt and you grow with it, with all the challenges that come with it. We've watched the steroid era, things like that. You adapt and you just keep playing the game, but, proud, hats off for the people that are making the change in their life to do what they need to do to feel good with themselves. And if it's the whole transgender thing, I'm learning a lot, believe me. But I'm okay with it, it's, at the end of the day, my life is my life, and I'm here, trying to be a positive influence for the ones around me, listen to our youth that are, making statements, right? Because I'm a parent, I have kids, and who knows what they're going to see when they're at our age, but if I teach them how to adapt, I think that's the biggest thing, and overcome it, and be okay with it. Not everything's perfect, but I do hear you and I do understand.
Kristen?
Yeah, not a lot to add. I'd just say, in response to Brendan's question, I've been a part of VPA for over 20 years. I've never known the VPA to sanction quite to this level. There have been schools and districts that have had a sanction. It usually is through a season or even a calendar year. I've not seen one that's quite as open-ended as this one is, so I'm not sure how that lands. But just as the superintendent, my worry and concern would be that the board would be acting unilaterally without understanding the voices and the values of our community. And when I say community, this would ripple not just through Otter Valley Union Middle and High School, it would also impact all of our elementary schools who have programs that are VPA sponsored, spelling bees, debate. Anything that VPA sponsors would be off the table if we were no longer a member of VPA and participating in sanctioned activities. So I would suggest that you would probably really want to understand not just one another's voices or parents, but students, teachers, the community. Activities are a pretty big part of what makes Otter Valley Union Unified Otter Valley. And I think that I would just hope that there would be some work to kind of dig into other people's voices.
Derek, you had.
Yeah, I had a question, so it's kind of a procedural one. I'm just wondering if do we have policies that really, is there a policy that relates to this, the topic, that we should be talking about this?
That relates to?
I mean, we're policy governance, so is there a policy? I mean, anybody can make a motion about a culture issue or a political statement or whatever, and we are not in the business of taking those kind of positions. We're in the business of monitoring our policies. So what policy are we under that we can talk about?
Treatment of students,
Maybe.
I think, maybe. But of
I mean,
course,
there
it's
may
not
be
our own students, it's really,
Well, if you potentially are taking away all extracurriculars, that might dip into the treatment of students. We have 2 students right here who would lose their right to participate this weekend in theater.
Yep.
I'm just wondering about the efficacy of bringing that kind of advocacy to this board.
Anytime, so just to give you a little bit of heads up, it's not about VPA, and I'll get to you, Brett, in just a second. At one time, when we were a relatively new OVUU board, we wrote a notice to, it was when Governor Scott wanted to claw back money from our school budgets. It was pre-COVID, and he essentially said, we don't have enough money to send to each school, so we're going to claw back a bunch of money. And we wrote a letter to him, specifically stating all the whereases, blah, blah, blah. And then he happened to come here 2 days later to see Otter Valley, and when they introduced me as Lori Bertrand, I didn't remember that my name is on it, and so he winged his head around, and he looked at me, and I was just like, hey. So, but the point of the matter is that I would much rather do something like that if the board wanted to, and strongly word something to VPA and say, look, we don't agree with what you're doing. This is not good for kids. But I don't want to hurt our kids in the process. I refuse to do that. You think we had a lot of people 2 weeks ago at our meeting? Imagine what it would be to say, oh, we're canceling sports. It would almost be like when we said we were going to make Pittsford kids go to Neshabie and Neshabie kids go to Pittsford. Remember that, Natalie? I remember you being there for that one. Yeah.
Good times, good times.
So but that is just my opinion. But I think we've all pretty much, I'm going to call the question because I think we've all pretty much are saying the same thing.
Brett had something.
Oh, sorry, Brett. All right, and then I'll call the question. There you go.
Maybe you're trying to save me. So, full disclosure, I've had like 2 hours of sleep in the last 2 days. So, I'm going to be very careful here because this is a super sensitive topic, and I think there's a lot of different pieces that are at play here. I think Kevin's not wrong for bringing this up. I think, we live in a country that was founded on, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. And that's really not for us to say whether or not those freedoms have been violated or not, but I think it's an interesting topic. I don't like the motion, so I think what I would like to do is propose an amendment to the motion to instead change it to either an editorial or a letter from the board to the VPA expressing our concerns.
I'll accept that as a friendly amendment.
All right, and who seconded it? Because you have to.
It was unfortunately Eric. So do we need a different second? What do we do?
All right, so I think then what we have to do, since Eric is gone, is we have to vote on the original motion, and then you can bring up another motion.
Okay.
Is that everybody okay with that? All right, so the original motion was to withdraw from the VPA immediately in response to their treatment of the mid Christian school in Queechee.
Can Kevin rescind the motion?
He could do that too, but it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Sure, that might save some time. Reword it to say, where is it? Sorry.
Just rescind your motion.
Okay, I'll rescind the motion.
Okay, motion's rescinded. So, new motion.
Well, is Kevin writing one right now?
Well, that's the question, is that, I mean, if if he's rescinding his motion, then, and saying I don't want that motion, then.
He's already on the.
Yeah.
I'm not, well, I don't know, maybe we're gonna say similar things, which you're probably better at. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know, there's a time check here. We gotta, move this along.
I would
So-
move that we write a position paper and send it to VPA, but we, as the board, need to approve that paper.
That is absolutely true. We
And you
have
can't
done
put
that.
via email.
Okay. That's true, we can't.
Did you just make a motion?
I did,
So there, we have a second.
Okay.
and I would, I mean, I don't want to do it tonight. I don't want the paper written tonight,
So,
How that plays out.
right, so, I mean, that means that we could have a special meeting to put this together.
Or a draft, could we look at a draft next meeting?
Well, that's in 2 weeks, and is that, how important is this to
I
get
just
out
really-
immediately?
We don't need to say a lot either.
Yeah, it's just based on free speech,
We do
right?
not agree with your decision.
Okay.
But we need to state why.
Yeah.
I think if we just say that people are going to interpret, I think we need to be clear that it's not, what's that? I'm sorry.
I'm just agreeing with you, yeah.
I just think we need to be clear about, I'm sorry I'm talking, I didn't raise my hand.
No, you're absolutely fine, but Derek had a question, so I was gonna let him.
I'm wondering about what the impact would be on our principals if we pull out. I mean, that's their organization, it's the principals.
But
We're not talking about
That's
that.
gone.
We're
That's
just, all we're
rescinded.
We
asking,
rescinded that.
all we're asking is to write a letter to VPA saying we do not agree with their stance, and we ask them to reverse their decision.
Reconsider it.
Right, reconsider.
Would there be any percentage in getting a reaction or a response from the principals in our district? I mean, it is their it's their professional organization, and we're saying, you guys are way off base, so should the principals be involved in any kind of?
You're making the statement as the Otter Valley Unified Union School Board, you're not speaking for your principals. If you want to speak for your principals, then yes, I would suggest you need their voices.
Okay. Yeah, I was just cautionary about that.
And the reasons should be all the same ones Kevin had in there. It's all the same reasons, just as drastic of a thing we're gonna do. We're just gonna write a letter, but for all the same reasons, we don't agree.
Well, see, that's why we need more time, because
I
I may
wouldn't
be.
agree with all those.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
There have been, I could be wrong about this, so I want to ask, I wish there was a principal or Stephen Keith here, but I feel like the VPA does things, and our principals do say, oh, we disagree with this idea.
All the time.
And so, I mean, often it comes from them. So you are kind of right, it doesn't always come from us. So I don't know, would it be appropriate to ask them about this, or no? Is this,
I believe
is this
you-
the 50,000 feet
I
free
get-
speech, you know?
I mean, I certainly don't want to speak for the principals, but I believe that you would have very few principals who would be willing to sign that letter as written. They might be willing to sign something that says, hey, hey, could you reconsider because this harms a whole slew of kids,
Yeah.
right? Which is true. So the outcome or the impact of your decision, but crafted that way, I would guess that they would want to take a peek.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to decide for them.
Kevin?
I want to be clear that I want this to be from the board, and I'll come back with another motion next meeting, if that's what that takes, and hope that it gets seconded. I'm very pleased that the board seems interested in taking a stance for free speech, and so I think that tonight I'm very willing to leave it with that. And also wanted to address very briefly what Brendan and Paul said. Brendan, you're right that this past week in Britain, a famous sports broadcaster took a stance on immigration issues in Britain and was reprimanded and suspended by the BBC for doing so. And his entire crew, all the other commentators, everyone who worked on the show walked out as well. And the BBC wound up backing down. So I would like to see this cascade into a movement where the VPA is forced to back down. Paul, your point about the game continuing is beautiful, but in the case of Mid-Vermont Christian, it's wrong. Their games have been canceled. Their students are not going to be allowed to participate in sports. Those are Vermont kids who are having their spring activities robbed from them. And frankly, I think the school is probably endangered because we all know that sometimes kids go to private schools to play sports. In a small place like that, that could make the difference. So I think we're not just talking about the kids in our district, we're defending the kids whose games have been canceled, presumably forever. If you read the letter from the VPA, it's very terse and very harsh. So that's why I think this is so critically important. I'm very willing to come back in 2 weeks. And Greg, by the way, I understand this is a really big step to what I proposed. I think it's, and I understand especially as a father of kids who benefited so much from sports, how important you think that is. And I agree with all of that. I went to the Division II Boys Championship in Montpelier over the weekend because I love high school basketball. But this is a critical issue in our society and in our state and for our schools. That's why I brought it up. I'll be happy to come back and I hope it's on the agenda in 2 weeks with a revised.
So here's what I wanted to say.
Yep.
Watch yourself, number one. Number two,
In what way?
I will bring it back onto the agenda with your comment about I hope it's on the agenda. We've had enough of that tonight already. And number one, it will be on the agenda. I was going to suggest that if you wanted to rewrite your letter, we would include it in the packet so that people could look it over before the meeting.
Thank you.
So that we're not doing that.
Thank you.
But I would suggest that you watch it. Okay? So, number one, the other thing is we need to rescind the motion that was made by Natalie at this point, if that's what we're doing. Are you willing to do that? Yes. Okay. Put it on the agenda. Please make sure I have that letter the Monday before the meeting goes out. And
Like 8 days.
yes.
8 days.
Yes.
Not the day before.
No,
8
the
days.
Monday prior to when the agenda goes out. Okay? And I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Okay, goodbye, everyone.